What is a good life all about? A universal question being addressed from different angles for different age groups. And as you see here, BBC Teach, aha, this is aimed for kids. A program for kids because they meet so many messages about what a good life is all about underneath the stories that surround them. And very often, wealth or fame or happiness are linked to this view of what a good life should be all about. So I know that they are not just into Disney, but I'm doing quite a bit of work on Disney. So I thought, okay, Disney has been going on for 100 years, and underneath the surface, in all the different stories that Disney has produced over the years, we can actually say that they have a very particular way of addressing young and old people about what a good life is all about. We very often find, oh, it's my dream and my will. That's very important in a good life. It's about being kind but true to yourself. It's about following your own heart. It's about not giving up. You'll get a reward. Have courage, have faith, and you deserve to be happy. Sometimes these important clues of a good life is spoken out very clearly in the Disney stories. Other times, we have to listen more careful. And in the midst of all the wonderful values that we will embrace in the Disney stories, there are quite a few things we would like to challenge as well. And that is the case also now when we have the angle of entertainment media and a good life. What is mirrored in typical stories, whether it's Disney or other outlets in the media? For instance, this lyrics, 21st Century Girl, by the daughter of Willow Smith, in 2011, when she says, 21st century girl, I do what I like. 21st century girl, I'm taking you for a ride. 21st century girl, yeah, I'm gonna live it up, just live it up. 21st century girl, a beautiful life. I set the boundaries, the rules don't own me. I'm sorry you just got this quoted by me and not sung by her. We don't have a lot of time, so I thought that was sparing us some seconds. But the message is clear-cut, isn't it? From this text's point of view, a good life means no boundaries for me, I'm free. And maybe you already have let it go in the back of your head, because it resonates very well with what what Elsa sang in this Frozen a couple of years later. That was 2013, and the quote from the 21st Century Girl was 2011. No right, no wrong, no rules for me, I'm free. Are we surprised? Of course not. We're not surprised that Disney is very often in the forefront, and what's being communicated there spills over to other songs and television shows and literature, and vice versa. But I hope we are fully aware of that the story in Frozen doesn't end with the main message in the lyrics, let it go, let it go. I had the most wonderful conversation with a group of tweens in Nairobi some years ago. I had seen an advertisement of frozen yogurt on the way out to this school, and I thought, oh, that gives me a way in to this wonderful group that is so far from me in age and cultural background. So I just referred to the advertisement and asked them, who did I actually see on that big poster? Oh, Anna and Elsa. And I started like this, and we sang Let It Go, Let It Go. And afterwards, we had a great conversation about what had happened before Elsa slammed the door, not literally, but still, and sang this and went on to build her own castle. And what happened later? And we realized together, the tweens in Nairobi, Kenya, and me, that the end of the story in Frozen is not to say a good life is all about me setting my own rules. It's also, and even more, about taking the hand that is reached out for me, taking on responsibility, and be in fellowship. So it's a mixture there. So I'm not saying that Frozen has this wonderful message, full stop. But I say that as Christians, we should dig deeper and discuss what is to be confirmed here, what is true, what is good, and what is to be challenged. The danger is that with this song, out of context, we get the impression that the good life is all about deciding for yourself. And this song has been on the radio and on Spotify all over, and people know the song, they might not know the whole story, which is very important for us to take into consideration. But Walt Disney himself, he had this urge to bring happiness to millions. That was his mission. That's actually a quote from a Disney brochure from 1966. And I think if we listen carefully, for instance, to Disney, we find that the way the good life and happiness has been portrayed in the stories throughout the 100 years, we see that there are a different way of viewing happiness and a different way of viewing a good life over the years. Why is that, since Walt Disney himself had this as his mission? Bring happiness to millions. Of course, it deals with that he operated in a certain time in history where Judeo-Christian values still were quite dominant in the American society. So in the beginning, happiness and the good life dealt very much with what Anna did to Elsa, stretching out her hand. Please come back, take on responsibility. We need each other to be good. Whereas later on, as we see in society as a whole, not just in America, all over the world, we see glimpses of this feel-good happiness. So when Tony Campolo, who has done a lot of research on Disney, says he's not sure that Disney, that is both Walt Disney and the Disney Company, creates the values as much as it reinforces values that are already operative, I'm Norwegian, in American society. That is why I very often say when I teach popular culture, the double listening and all that back home to my students and around in churches and conferences, popular culture mirrors the society it helps to create. And please remember, helps to create. It's not that popular culture molds us totally like clay, but it mirrors what it also molds, to put it like that. So I think that is quite a good illustration of Disney and all other stories in the relationship to society. But happiness is sometimes very, very clear-cut when you watch a movie or a television series or read a book or whatever, listen to music. But here, it can't be missed at all. The Pursuit of Happiness with Will and Jaden Smith, 2006, about this broken salesman in San Francisco he was homeless and he had lost everything, but he ended up as a very successful businessman. This story has a link to the old ancient classic story retold by Socrates called The Choice of Heracles or Hercules. A story about the young Hercules who wants happiness and who is offered a choice between vice and virtue. between a life of pleasure or a life of hardship and honor. And the old philosopher Socrates, he underlines that we are all pursuing happiness. That is the hoped-for destination on everyone's road, whether you choose vice or virtue. That's Socrates. That is what's really portrayed in this movie. Now, if you haven't watched them, I think you should take a look at that movie and link that to what is a good life? What is happiness all about? Clear-cut in this particular movie, but wherever you go, whether one of these apps attracts you or in other parts of entertainment media, just underneath the surface, there's always a pointer to good life, what that should be all about, and what happiness is all about. I don't know whether you read his Dark Materials when you were younger by Philip Pullman. At least it captured the imagination of generations. And he's from Oxford. He is an atheist, very, very open about his atheism. And still, I have a lot in common with him. And he says, all stories teach, whether the storyteller intends them to or not. And it's wonderful when you have someone, of course I'd love for him to be a Christian, don't misunderstand me, but it's wonderful that you can stand alongside a person with such a different worldview from your own and agree, yes, this is so true. Because there is no such thing as a neutral story. There is no such thing as just entertainment. There's always a message there. And the message very often deals with, how can I live a good life? And a good life deals with happiness. If we want to figure out in an easy-going way the pointers underneath the surface in the stories, it's very wise to listen and watch to what do they actually search for? What do they long for? What do they hope for? And what seems to be at least part of the answer? That is what Julia Roberts did in Eat, Pray, Love. Or to put it more correctly, we could easily ask these questions when we watch this movie that is built on Gilbert's famous novel. After the divorce, heartbroken, asking, what's life all about? And she sets out on a journey to figure out, where can I find myself, a happy life, a good life. And I won't spoil the, if you don't know it, I think you should at least read an extract of what this goes into, because it's so typical for 2023, even though it's quite an old movie. But the thing is that even though the movie got mixed reviews, it was a huge success. Why? Of course we know the answer. It resonated with the longings of each and every individual. We search, we long for coming home, finding somewhere to belong, finding love, finding happiness, finding a good life. Did she find that, a lasting good life? I won't spoil it. But we as Christians, with these glasses on, the glasses that are colored by the biblical worldview, we should challenge as well as say yes to, I forgot this, we challenge and we, another C. Sometimes English words just drop out. But some of them are in conflict and some are in line with what we think. And you understand that that was what I was about. But the gospel of self-sufficiency and self-fulfillment is the gospel of eat, pray, love. And you see by the title where she sought in food, in prayer, in love. Sometimes I find it really hard not just to find the English words, I can live with that, but to relate properly to all the messages in popular culture, in entertainment media. Relate in a way that helped me to grow as a Christian. Do you? Because we are not immune. And we cannot escape from this. We can escape from certain movies, certain television series, certain stories. Oh yes, of course, and we do so. But we cannot escape from the main values that are all over. So we need help. And that is what John Stott intended to give us. He challenges us, but he also offers help in this well-known quote of his, double listening to the word and to the world. This is to me a biblical perspective of cultural engagement. And he actually says that these voices, the voices from the Bible and the voices from the stories surrounding us, will very often contradict each other. But our purpose in listening to them both is to discover how they can relate to each other. Double listening is indispensable to Christian discipleship and Christian mission. So we have no choice. We cannot just go with the flow, and we cannot just withdraw and think, oh, I can't cope with this anyhow. Well, we are called as salt and light. We are called as Christ's disciples also to go underneath in the stories in entertainment media and ask, how is a good life portrayed? And how does this resonate with the biblical view of a good life? What is happiness all about? And we are called to tell this wonderful, true, better, very best story of what a good life is all about. But broadly speaking, if we look around us today, we find two myths that help, well, they are supposed to help us to live a good life. The first is the life of excess. If only you get hold of more money or technology and be in the forefront of what's going on, that will give you a good life. The belief in happiness and fulfillment through technology and availability of everything that is offered in today's world. The life of excess. And of course, these pitfalls. At the other end, the life of simplicity. If only I can have a very simple lifestyle, I will find the good life, the freedom, the real happiness. Minimum of possessions. And with these main myths in the two different ends, we find blends of them in all different sorts, and they meet us in different variations, in different stories. But you can easily identify where is the life of excess, the most important one, and where is the life of simplicity, the most important ones. And both of them, of course, link happiness to the good life. And you notice from the very start of this seminar that it's just intertwined. We can't put them away from each other. Happiness is linked to a good life. And yesterday when Greg Pritchard asked some of us who are leading networks, I'm the co-leader of the Media Communicators Network, to listen to him for a while, he said that happiness is the key value for Americans today. And I wanted to scream out, not just Americans, it's Norwegians, it's all over, especially in Europe, it's all over, happiness. And the question is, what sort of happiness? The Western word of happiness has gone from be good to feel good. So when I refer to Walt Disney in the very beginning here, when he started off 100 years ago, bringing happiness to millions, that was his desire. It was in a culture where be good was the dominant view of happiness. You have a happy life if you are good to others, and then others are good to you, and you're not forgetting yourself, but it's not based on the feelings. And please, don't worry, I won't go deep into this, but it's highly interesting though. Words carry meaning. What has happened is that be good, that was used eudaimonia from Greek to translate O is good, diamond spirit, and we have Aristotle and virtue ethics. There's all this when happiness is linked to be good. And then you have this Norse. I come from Norway. I'm not happy about saying this because Norse is my language way back. Hap, luck, chance, slippery. Perhaps you'll be happy. Perhaps you'll have a good life. Do you see? It's so slippery when happiness is based on feelings, when a good life is based on what you feel, and not whether you look to the other and would like to be kind to others. The Happiness Project, I know it's not new, it's quite a few years back, but it turned from a bestseller to a movement. And this longing to create happiness in the daily routines is something I'm sure you want as well as I do. And that was the trend that Gretchen Rubin really sort of got a really kick forward in. And we see it in so many different ways now that create happiness for yourself in your daily life, but it's still about me. We have that back home in our fridge, on our fridge. And you may wonder, is this a Christian couple? Happiness is not a destination, it's a way of life. I keep it as a reminder of the truth of how I embrace every day as a gift from the Lord, and I want to be good, and I want to live a good life that is fruitful for others, and that's real happiness. But I know very well that the main message underneath this phrase is linked to what we just saw here, that I'm creating this for myself in the daily life. Anyone who now have a wonderful smell from rituals? You know, we know that this really deals with beauty and home products, but we know, or maybe we don't, that Rituals, this brand, is a very, very good example of how advertisement industry not just sell us a product, but they would like to sell us a pointer or even an answer to where to find the good life, where to find happiness. And Rituals helps you to slow down, to find happiness in the smallest of things. It's our passion to turn everyday routines into more meaningful rituals. A quote from their own website. And I just couldn't help having this as well. The Book of Rituals, Love in the Center, a compass built up of 13 factors. You can dig into it on the website and you can read a manual of how you can really experience happiness and a good life. Not just by buying their products, but by looking into yourself. The Art of Soulful Living, daily devotionals. Buddha is quoted there, but it's hard for you to see, so I'll quote. We are shaped by our thoughts. We become what we think. Quote Buddha. That's on the front here. Oh, I'd love just to stay in this and dig into the rituals philosophy. Helping us. I'm not saying that you need help, but I need help, and therefore we help each other. Helping us to remember that there's always traces of a worldview or a mixture of worldviews underneath the messages. Also, when you buy a bar of soap. Write your story, write your feelings, breathe. Remember who you are. Discover the brand new House of Rituals journal, Authenticity. Those of you who attend youth network for youth ministry or have been into already some workshops dealing with that, you know, authenticity is one of the key things that young people long for and would like to embrace in our lives. Our lives. I'm not young, but I want authenticity as well, but in another way than is offered by rituals. Anyway, wherever we look in the entertainment media and in advertisement, is also part of this entertainment, there is much more than meets the eye. So how do we build a bridge? That's what I say we in Damaris Norway try to do in our different outlets, but double listening with a worldview approach is the bottom line, I feel, when it comes to dealing with this. And we build on James Sire's worldview definition. There are many ways of defining a worldview, but by relating both to a story and a set of presuppositions, I feel that we embraces the different ways a worldview can be understood and explained and identified. It's a commitment, a fundamental orientation of the heart that we can express both as a story or a set of presuppositions. And they may be true, partially true, or entirely false. We may hold them consciously or subconsciously, consistently, or they may just be inconsistent. But we hold them about the basic makeup of our world, constitution of reality, and that provides the foundation on which we live and move and have our being. Sort of quoting Paul there, when he quotes Greek authors. By having that as a background, I think, at least I find that a tool that I developed quite a few years ago is very helpful. When I say that in every worldview, whether it's secular or religious, there are 4 key components. There are a view of ethical values, there is a view of humanity, reality, and faith. Not faith as in a religious faith, but faith as in I need someone to trust in, or somewhere to put my trust. Everyone needs that. So if we just go underneath the surface, it's just like what we can see and hear in the stories and entertainment media. They are just above the sea level, like an iceberg. You see just the top. Don't confuse this with ELF. This conference is also just the very top of the iceberg, and the key thing is underneath. That's what we heard this morning. But here, the key thing is actually also underneath. Out from the way of living that we can identify in Eat, Pray, Love, for instance, as we said, or in the rituals, the wonderful smell and all that goes with it, what's being said and done give pointers to a view of ethical values, and what a human is all about, what reality is all about, and where we should put our trust. If we just deal with ethical values, that is the easiest part. That's what first meets the eye. And then that is linked to the rest. We go in there and we see that a good life is very often feel-good happiness. So in the different media stories that are meant to entertain us, we see that there is an emphasis on image, on performances, on relationships, on possessions, on experiences, explorations, not the least sexual, but also spiritual, and self-determination. All these factors I have identified while doing a lot of research into different popular television series, songs, movies, and they are so alike. Why is that? Because popular culture mirrors the society it helps to create. So when we see the emphasis on these 4 factors, we see that it's a feel-good happiness that constitutes the good life. And at the very heart is individualism. It doesn't come as a surprise. Also because we know oneself, ourselves. I'm an individualist, I am. I fight it, try to fight it every day. This ego. But never ever, I think, in history, this urge to think of me, has got so much help from society as today. Because we are constantly fed this, what's good for you? Feel good, you should feel good, and all the rest of it. So the Disney gospel is the gospel that we see all around, isn't it? It's all about me, my dreams, my will. When you wish upon a star, your dreams come true. The Disney Bible has but one verse, and that is it, says Mark Pinsky. Still, to be fair to Disney, Walt Disney, in a lot of the stories up to just a few decades ago, this me happiness was still linked to that I am responsible for your happiness as well. And we need each other, reaching out a hand, just to be in the metaphor from Elsa and Anna. So we shouldn't throw out all the good values in Disney because of this. And we read this from 2023 perspective, that me is expressive individualism. But of course it's individualism. So we need always to balance between what can we confirm, that was the other C, confirm, and what to challenge. Confirm and challenge. Anyone who watched the Pixar film Soul from 2020? And then you know why I just simply had to dig into this for a tiny little moment. Joe Gardner, the jazz musician. Oh, I was born to play. I was born to play. And he says to his mother, on the very day when he thinks he will have his breakthrough as a musician, if I were to die now, my life wasn't worth living. And of course, well, I shouldn't say that much, because if you haven't watched it, and not all of you have, you should. Because he, in one way or another, his soul is separated from his body, but it comes back. They are reunited. But this happens before this concert of his. So he doesn't get this breakthrough. And when he returns to earth, so to speak, he is asked, how will you live your life now? And he says, and he ends by, I'm certain of one thing, I will live every minute. And we can embrace a lot of that, to see the beauty in the leaves falling, the sounds and food and relationships. But underneath is this very, very clear pointer to I am what I feel. In the first place, he was what he performed. If only he could perform as a jazz musician, he was brilliant. This is what life is all about. But now it's feelings. So there is something here about pointers to different ways of finding happiness, finding good values, but it's self-realization in different ways. I'd love to quote the director, Pete Docter, if I may. He says, "This film is about broadening the idea of a singular focus to thinking more widely about what life has to offer and what we have to offer life. That is, do not just think of what you can perform. Your identity is not in your performances, in what you can do, but what you can take in and what you can feel." So the movie helps us to look up and around and to each other, but it doesn't give any help to figure out what is the source of meaning. What is the source of the proper good life? No. And if we were to go further into the Disney universe, which we aren't, I just have to point out that over the last few decades, the characters very often search in here to figure out who they are, to find identity, meaning, happiness, the good life. More and more, even though there are still mixed messages, but more and more this tendency to search within. And that's exactly what we find around us. And of course, when in Disney World Orlando, you cannot any longer say, "Welcome, boys and girls, to this wonderful show," but you have to say, "Good evening, dreamers of all ages." We see one of very many examples of how Disney now is more and more captured by this expressive individualism. Don't offend anyone. Not about their sexuality, whether they feel they are women or men, girls, boys. No, don't offend anyone. It's the individualism taken to an extreme. And I'm actually promised my nephew that we will go there this summer, and he says, "Margunn, Auntie Margunn," he's very polite, "you have to go there. You are doing research on Disney, and I will help you." Okay? Okay. I've got the funding to go there. It's so expensive, so I was very happy. But anyway, the expressive individualism, a tiny little glimpse into the expressive individualism that you may have gone deep into, or you may not, but we know it's all around us. It is this thinking that every person has a unique core of feeling and intuition that should be unfolded and expressed if at all we are realizing an individuality. So if we are not expressing this intuition or feeling of who I am, and if you don't confirm to be true what I feel is true, then it's not proper. So it has really gone far, far away from individualism, and individualism in itself is a trap for us. So it elevates individuals' personal identity and our ability to express that above all else. That is the key important thing, to express who I feel that I am. Don't bother about what you see. I am what I feel. So if I say I feel like a man, even though I'm dressed like this, you should say, yes, you are. So, Charles Taylor the philosopher, he makes the claim that even though we would say this is so extreme, it's not our cup of tea, he says we are all sort of influenced by it to a certain extent. Because when we agree that individual happiness and individual fulfillment are essential to living a happy life, we are actually starting to embrace expressive individualism. I repeat, when we agree that individual happiness and individual fulfillment are essential to living a happy life, we are sort of bought into the expressive individualism. I'm sorry, this time of day and this very, very sad focus, but it's true. And even Dahle, one of the most popular artists, I love her voice, I love her honesty, I love so much of her music, but underneath, in this 30 Dahle, all these different lyrics deals with her divorce. That is mostly about her relationship to her son, not that much to relationship to her ex-husband, but underneath, she is just mirroring this expressive individualism that is all around us. So she is by no means extreme, not at all. But she searched for happiness, and in order to find herself and be happy, she had to get rid of her marriage. And please, I'm not saying that she is extreme at all, but what she is communicating is just an echo of what we see in so many different outlets and entertainment media, but not the least what we find among ordinary people. Just listening to conversations. I want to live a happy life. I had to leave him because I had to find myself. And we can go straight back to Eat, Pray, Love, and it was the same. But we didn't have the expressive individualism as a coin at that time. So she is just digging into, maybe without knowing, what is so normal and accepted in our culture. But it doesn't mean that it's good for us. It doesn't mean that it's true. Definitely not. So what about us? Like Tim Keller, who was called home the other day. He says, if anything becomes more fundamental than God to our happiness, meaning in life and identity, then it is an idol. We are not immune, whether towards the expressive individualism or the feel-good happiness or what good life is all about, not at all. So by using the Act 17 model, identify and utilize points of contact and identify and challenge point of tension, we can help each other. We are in Athens. We know what Paul did. He confirmed and he challenged. And that is what we are to do. So when we go into media stories to search for points of contact, we see there are lots of deep longings for true identity, real community, deep joy, authentic freedom. Underneath, we hear it, we see it. So with the open hand, we say, we understand these deep longings, and we would like to invite you to explore how a biblical worldview actually fulfills your longings. It's obvious that we long for a happy life, a good life, but what's that all about? What is the true identity? What's real community? What is deep joy? What is authentic freedom? When Jessie G screams out that she stares at her reflection in the mirror, Why am I doing this to myself, losing my mind on a tiny error? I nearly left the real me on the shelf. No, no, no. Don't lose who you are in the blur of the stars. Seeing is deceiving. Dreaming is believing. It's okay not to be okay. Sometimes it's hard to follow your own heart. Tears don't mean you're losing. Everybody's bruising. Be true to who you are. That is what Dahle also says. It was so hard for her to break up with her husband. Don't think that I didn't try, she screams out in one of the lyrics. I made a sacrifice. But Dahle made a sacrifice in order to find happiness. And it's quite okay that you are hurt as long as you are true to who you are. It's worth it. And the long-running Grey's Anatomy is still going strong. No one believes their life will turn out just okay. We all think we'll be great. Great expectations of who we will be, where we will go, and then we get there. The dream is that we'll finally be happy when we reach our goals. It resonates with what we all may feel. When I reach my goal, then I'll be happy. Where do they find happiness? A colleague of mine did an analysis using the tool that I had developed. And she says that, they find identity and meaning in relationships and performances. Both and. But if they have to choose, they opt for performances. What they can perform give them a sort of feeling that, at least I'm worth something. But they are struggling. What if you had it all but nobody to call? Maybe then you'd know me, because I've had everything. Lonely by Justin Bieber. The loneliness underneath. I'm lonely. A lone life. No, there are billions and billions and billions of clicks. Emily, super lonely. That is what made her breakthrough as an artist. And it's not just because of the COVID-19. If we listen into and walk alongside the young generations of today, we know very well that loneliness is a key longing underneath this happiness. Billie Eilish, still the queen of Gen Z, isn't she? Is she? Well, but she is very popular. I got everything I wanted, not that what you'd think. And if I'm being honest, it might have been a nightmare to anyone who might care. Though I thought I could fly, so I stepped off the gold. Nobody cried, nobody even noticed. What's this all about? She is singing about a nightmare she had. That she fell off the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and she dreamt that nobody noticed, nobody cared. And she said afterwards, this nightmare was so real to me because I fear that no one will take any notice if I'm not here any longer. Lonely and so popular underneath. When I first heard the phrase, we have to be our own family, that was in my research on Dawson's Creek in the 90s. Little did I know that that is what I hear all over today. We need to be our own family, young people, because the nuclear family is disappearing. Well, we have the same in Friends, a bit older, and we have in Modern Family a way of building a fence around the nuclear family, but it's a very special nuclear family, and who is in the forefront? It's the younger generation. So, and Russell Brand saying that all these different types of happiness is nothing if I don't get into the spiritual feel-good happiness. But how does that end? Scum, shame, this Norwegian series that took everyone, at least in Norway, by surprise that it became so popular in different parts of the world. But just think of shame, not guilt. And season after season deal with very, very demanding issues in youth culture. And they end up with feeling no guilt, but so shameful. Maybe not at ELF when you're here, but when you go back home, go into the Focal online, write shame, and you will find a lot of material from a colleague of mine, Anne Solfrid Sprenhovd, who gave some wonderful workshops on shame another year here at ELF. Points of tension then. These key longings reflect underlying perspectives and traces of worldviews like consumerism, materialism, individualism, and subjectivism. And then we are not helped with only the open hand. I use this, not that I'm doing like that with people, but I think we have to challenge. So I use the closed fist as an illustration of challenging the contemporary views and lifestyles of happiness by seeing that this is an underlying idolatry with and phrase that with the biblical gospel. Sorry about my English there. So the closed fist is just a metaphor for showing that we have to challenge and see how hollow it is, and to offer not just a better story, but the very best story. And the Kardashians, they really show us both how I wrote here, they have a very strong emphasis of image, of course, as we have seen, and performance, as we have seen, and success, as we have seen, as key factors, but also the need for belonging, as well as the need for family and relationships. So we feel both and I really wonder whether we deal with these underlying worldview perspectives in our teaching. I think we have quite a long way to go to deal with it properly. So this biblical perspective on a good life, if we are to summarize that before going into some questions, I think we would say that the image of God is the first and most important key point. We have been created with dignity to reflect God's goodness. Could we just take a deep breath and dwell on that for a second? In the midst of all the images surrounding us, urging us to find happiness and meaning and identity in either performances or possessions, in experiences, they are all hollow. The image of God, we have been created with dignity to reflect God's goodness. And the indwelling of Christ. We have come to Christ in faith, receiving forgiveness for sins, and we are called to love God and others. And the imitation of Christ. We are called to live a life of purpose and service, reflecting the goodness of Christ. To me, these three key points help me to anchor what a good life is all about from the biblical worldview. The glasses that I want to look not just you through, but everything through these glasses marked by the biblical worldview. And in the book Discovering the Good Life by Tim Savage, he actually says, Christians and non-Christians alike experience dashed dreams, ruined relationships, failures, regrets, and discouragement. Do you agree? Of course, that's life. That's life. And faced with all this, a distinctly Christian vision of the good life is being in Christ. This is the most liberating and fulfilling experience every single human being could have. And we could give lots of workshops together now, shouldn't we, of how easily Christians portray a life that is so easygoing, that, come to Jesus and all your problems will be solved. Jesus is the answer. Don't bother about the question. No, I'm just making a caricature here. But you know what I'm aiming at. It's so easy not to be open about struggles, that if we are open about our struggles, our vulnerability, our need for forgiveness, our need for Christ's strength, that he walks beside me and he lifts me up and I couldn't make a day without him, that's authenticity. That is what everyone looks out for and needs. We need authentic people. We need an authentic gospel. We need an authentic happiness. That is a mixture of sometimes feeling good and sometimes, life is good even though. So the indwelling in Christ, that's our blind spot as Christians, he says. But the good news is that there is more. It can be found not in the things of this world, not in science or nature or possessions or money or religion or pleasure, but in Jesus Christ. Nothing else will satisfy your heart. Works of self-giving love in a self-grasping world are supernatural works. They are miracles, and they are symptomatic of the Christian life. We can never do this on our own, but by the Holy Spirit in us, given by Christ. When we become bearers of God's and Christ's love, we become beacons of Christ's love. Beacons. When we experience Christ's love, we exhibit Christ's love. Love cannot be held in. It's like a river flooding its banks, like a pent-up geyser blowing its top. Love cascades out of the Christian into the lives of others. Wow, it's beautiful, isn't it? But it's true. It's Christ in us. It's Christ in us. So it's such an encouragement and it's also such a challenge when we face what's going on around us and what we can feel inside. As disciples and witnesses in this culture, we are invited to experience the love of Christ and we are called to share his love and to reflect the goodness of Christ in our lives through the power of the Holy Spirit. And I have always been a fan of Tim Keller. Well, not always, not when I was a kid, but when he came into my life via the media. And I quote him not because he was raised to heaven the other day, but because this is so apt to what we are talking about. He says about the book, this is an apologetic for the Christian life in response to a culture dedicated to seeking personal fulfillment, but finding that very thing more and more elusive. Tim Keller knew exactly how to put it. And it resonates with what I can feel, and I'm sure you are not that very much different.